This is the view of the ocean from the balcony of our hospitality room.
Zybort from Little Silver, New Jersey. I first started in the Army Air Force in 1941 at Windsor Lock, Westoverfield, Connecticut. I did not enter the service until June of 1942. I was called into active service in October of 42 as a aviation cadet. I was sent to Nashville, Tennessee for classification. I went to Maxwell Field for pre-flight. I believe it was class 43I. After Nashville, I was sent to Dar Aerotech, Georgia for a primary. I washed out because they had a quota of something like 80%. Being the name of Zybort, I was let go. My instructor pilot says he doesn't understand why. I remember one incident where we're flying touch and go, and most of the planes ground looped. As I was coming in, my wing tipped. I gave her the gas, and she straightened out. I came around, and the pilot motioned me down. I settled down, taxied the plane close to him, and he gave me holy hell. He says, "Don't you know when you ground loop, you're not supposed to take the plane up again?" I says, "I didn't ground loop." He walked around the whole plane. He says, "My God, you're right." So we took off to the field. The others didn't. After that, they washed me out. Then I was reclassified as a AM for flight engineering. I took my flight engineering in Keesler Field, Biloxi, Mississippi. Graduating from Keesler, we went to Tyndall for gunnery school. Now, that is the school that Clark Gable was at. And I sat in the same bench he sat in. After gunnery, we went to Salt Lake City for, I guess, crew classification. And after that, we went to Pueblo, Colorado for our transitional. And transitional, I was in the plane Fertile Myrtle, a B-24, written up by Ernie Pyle, who died in battle in the South Seas. I saw his marker in Honolulu Cemetery. I believe it's Punchbowl. After my transitional flying with my crew, I was assigned to a crew by the name of James Beatty and Chuck Larson, who was a co-pilot. Later on, Chuck Carson did not fly with us, but we had Elting Wells as a co-pilot. Our crew consisted of Dunphy, Ameta, Dowell, one more, Ted Garbiff, and the bombardier, which I don't know, I forgot his name, and Earl Burke was our radio man. That was our crew. We had transitional in Pueblo, Colorado. We flew around there. We enjoyed ourselves. We had missions. There were a couple incidences where we couldn't find our field. We landed up someplace in North Dakota. Being the navigator, I saw a lighthouse. I said, head for that. We did. and it was a fighter base field, so we landed. Next morning we got up, pre-flighted the plane, took off. After transitional, we were ready to go overseas. We went to Kansas City for an airplane. We didn't obtain a plane, so they sent us to Camp Kilmer for overseas. In Kansas City, when they took our official crew photograph, there are two individuals that did not smile. They are the radio man and the bombardier. They are both missing in action. We went to Camp Kilmer, and from Camp Kilmer we boarded the QE. On the QE we had a famous band leader, Glenn Miller, and Johnny Desmond on it. We arrived in England someplace, I guess Birmingham or Hampton, one of those up north. We were assigned a plane, and we had our training in Scotland for about a week or two. Then we started flying. We flew, and every time we did fly, we were hit by flak. And the last time I counted were about 67 holes in it. My last mission, but first I must tell you about my outfit. I am from the 392nd Bomb Group, the 577 Squadron. Since I attend the reunions, there are very few of the 577. I had 5 full missions, never received my air medal or anything, or my rating, which was promised to me after every flight. I was a sergeant then. On the 6th mission, the target for today was Hamburg. We had our breakfast, we had our briefing, we were taken to our plane. The plane number was 604. We were debating as to its name. We have never named it, but it was a 604. And we got to the flight line, put on our parachutes, and took off. I had one fear every time we took off, was that somebody, after I drained the gasoline out of the sight gauges, that somebody would drop a match or a cigarette butt. And we had a rule that nobody would smoke in a plane. I remember one incident in Pueblo, Colorado, where we let a waste gunner up, and I emptied out the sight gauge, the 100-octane gasoline, and there was Jim sitting down, tapping his ashes where I just released the 100-octane gasoline. And I gave him holy hell, and I told him to get back, never come to the cockpit area again. Because I remember in Pueblo where a couple of planes were taking off, and as soon as they took off, they blew. And I always wondered whether that was one of the causes. So, going back to the story, on August 6, 1944, target Hamburg, we took off. We circled around, and we're in formation. I believe we were the last group trailing the 392nd Bomb Group. Our squadron, I guess, we're in the lower right-hand corner. And we took off. We were heading towards our target. Near the IP, before the IP, the pilot received word that nobody was throwing chaff out of our plane. So Beatty told me to go back into and see what was happening. When I went to the back of the plane to the waist, the person who was going to throw out the chaff was more or less in shock. He just sat there, and I shook him, told him to sit back, which he did, and I started throwing out the chaff. As we were going to the IP, Beatty yelled out, "My God, a plane blew up in front of us." At that moment, I saw a big, beautiful orange and black flash coming through the side of our plane. I immediately felt that I was hit in my leg, and I bounced up and down. This is still on the IP. Ted was taking the navigation. He was going to drop the bombs. But what happened, our number 1 and number 3 engine. Number 3 engine had the hydraulic system. And I told Beatty to drop the bombs. He said, "No, we'll make it out all right." So he used up all the hydraulic system. And after we went over the target, he says, "Now what?" I said, "Pull the switch and salvo the bombs." And he couldn't do it. He says, "The doors must have closed or something," and we didn't release our bombs. In the meantime, I crawled from the right side of the plane to the left against the bulkhead. And I was talking to Beatty saying, "I want the battle kit." Good Berquist, the boy that we lost, came back to me, and then when I sent him back for the battle kit, he never appeared. I understand that 3 years later, he was found in a shallow grave in Germany. But in the meantime, I was in pain and I was passing out. I tried to stop bleeding by taking off my helmet. And when I did that, I did not receive any communications from the pilot. Next thing I know, I see some of them jumping out of the plane. I passed out again. Next thing I know was Dowell was coming out of his tail turret, and I asked him to throw the parachute to me because it was out of my reach and I was sitting down. So I climbed over, put my parachute on. But in the meantime, I instructed everybody that anybody was hurt, take him and throw him out and pull his ripcord. That did not happen. So when I was crawling out, I couldn't hit anything. I was trying going out of the back hatch. When I had stuck my head out, I could see the trees coming up were low, and I couldn't fall out. So what I did was take my left foot, my injured foot, put over my right foot. Then I crawled more out towards the opening of the back hatch. And then when I put my head out, the slipstream took me and hit me against the back and broken my compound fracture of my upper leg. So I looked, as I was pulled out by a slipstream, I was counting 1, 2, then I heard a thud. I got hit by the plane as I bounced up. The next thing I knew, I said 8, 9, 10, I ripped the cord. It opened up, and as soon as it opened up, I saw our plane hit next to a farmer's house, and it blew up with all the bombs. And I said to myself later on, that's the first time I ever saw the atom bomb go off. Being hurt, I tried to pull myself so I could fall backwards because I knew I couldn't fall forward. As I twisted the parachute to turn around, I passed out. I landed without consciousness. I lay there for a while, then I woke up, and it seemed to be that they were sounds. I picked up my head. There was a ring of PWs. I heard French voices and Polish voices. So I yelled, "Help! Help!" And they started coming closer, closer. As they were getting closer, 2 German soldiers came by, old soldiers, and one of them lifted his gun, his rifle, and shot. But there was a dud. Next thing I knew, some Frenchman was fighting with him. And I don't know what happened, but he must have stopped the German from taking a second shot. In the meantime, as the fighting was going on, the Luftwaffe came, officers, and they stopped everything, and they to take me out. In the meantime, I passed out again. It seemed that every time I lifted my head, for any period of time, I passed out. Was it from pain or not? Because I know that when I was lifted onto the cart that used to spread manure, and it was the cart from the farmhouse that our plane blew up. Next thing I knew, I woke up again. There was a pitchfork and a farmer yelling, "Mein Hausen fliegen," my house burned. He blamed me. So they pulled him off the cart and took me to the truck. I met 2 of my crew. They said everybody was all right, but one individual had a sprained ankle. That's the last time I saw any member of my crew. I was in a hospital Sunday afternoon. They took out a handful of shrapnel. The doctor was the Prince Consort's doctor of Yugoslavia, and the other doctor was a headman from Belgrade Orthopedic Hospital. In the hospital, well, I had something like 13, 14 transfusions, different nationalities, French, German. There was one Frenchman that gave me 6 blood transfusions. About November 11th, doctor came in and said that, "Look, we tried to save you. You have gangrene. If we try to save you, you may have the gangrene go into your bloodstream and you would die." He says, "What do you want to be, a legless son or a dead hero?" I gave him my hand. I said, "A legless son," knowing that I would have another chance. And next day, November 12, 44, they amputated. November 18th, the British were flying a night mission. They were very generous. I had a hemorrhage of my blood. The sutures that were tied to the end of my stump burst, and all the blood came through the cot I was sleeping on. It was a straw cot. So therefore, they worked on me all the night through. They claimed that I had no heartbeat for about 3 minutes, and they went next day to the hospital and they found an infection. They removed the infection. I was still sick. I had my last rites, and therefore I didn't know anything what was going on. I just felt the same. About November the 12th, no, December 1st or 2nd, penicillin came in, and that saved my life. And then I found out I was repatriated October 23rd, 43, but I was too sick to be traveled. I went to, in January they repatriated me again, and I was sent to Stalag Salzburg. I think it was C9, something like that. I was there for about a week, and then in February they shipped us out from the hospital to Munich, to Switzerland, repatriated, went to Marseille, France, on the boat, Algonquin. Used to be a gambling ship, but there was a medical evac hospital. And then in, I guess, sometimes later in February, I boarded the good ship Gripzone, the last ship that repatriated the GIs in Europe, exchanged prisoners. I arrived here in, I think, February the 23rd of 45. Landed in the Holland General Hospital, Thomas and England Hospital, Percy Jones Hospital, and Fort Custer, where I was discharged. So therefore, I was something like 22 months in hospitals after being shot down. Then I was let loose from the, I think it was the Air Force then, not the Army Air Corps. That is my story of woe of the 392nd. I did have some experiences out of blood transfusion, the old style where they used to pump from Captain Turner. It's take the blood out, switch the old-fashioned machine, put it to me, and give me blood. They just cut my veins. I had no feeling or no blood, and I weighed 180 pounds, and what do you think I came out of? 85 pounds. Strapping.
8.